Hi folks, it's October 9th, 2021. We're at the end of the growing season here for this year, and a lot of things have already been taken out of the garden. The melons are all finished, they're all done, and the tomatoes are done. I have one last sun gold tomato plant to take out. Still have some peppers growing. There is a pumpkin plant that is still blossoming, for goodness sake. I don't expect they're going to do much, but there's still a few pumpkins left on that vine. And you know, the winter squashes, they're really staying in. I like to leave them in longer because I think they get sweeter. I just like to let them mature. We like the flavor better. We just picked some green beans again. We've been having green beans all season long, and sooner or later they're going to give out. They're going to stop producing, but we've still got them. Let's head in. So like I said, the winter squash is still in, and you can see that it's dying back considerably. This was vibrant growth this summer, just tremendous growth. And like I said, I like to leave the squashes on, but it's about time to get them out of here now. One of the reasons for that is we have woodchucks and we have deer that seem to think that these are for them. Now I have a fence around. The deer will jump over the fence. And I have sprayed the sweet potatoes and the peas with egg water, just eggs, beat up eggs and water in a garden sprayer. And the deer don't really like that, so they leave the things alone. But I've not sprayed the winter squash, and I see there's a butternut squash that's been eaten over there. And we've had several that the woodchucks have eaten. And I set live traps and got a couple of them out of here this year. Don't want them. Those woodchucks really can cause a lot of destruction in a hurry. And so we're going to harvest some pumpkins today. We're going to harvest some butternut squash, and we're going to harvest some spaghetti squash. You know, we have been making some things out of the pumpkins this year, and the pumpkin soup is really good. And it's simple. You don't have to put a lot of ingredients in it, and it's really good, and it's a hearty meal. And pumpkin is surprisingly good for you. It's very healthy. A lot of good things in pumpkin, just like the butternut squash. In butternut squash, we make soup, and we roast it, cut it in half and roast it, or cube it up and roast it with olive oil and cinnamon or nutmeg or whatever spices you want to put on it. And we like that a lot. We actually have put a little bit in stew, and butternut squash in stew is really good, surprisingly. And the spaghetti squash, man, it just got out of hand this year. We have so many spaghetti squash, more than we can possibly eat. So let's go ahead and start doing some harvesting and see what we end up with. So when determining when to harvest your butternut squash, there are lines on the squash that you can see, these lines here. When they're not really ripe and ready to harvest, those are very, very pronounced, and they're long and they're big. At this stage of the game, this vine is dying back, so this squash is ready to harvest. You can still see the green lines, but that's not an issue at this point. Now, that's kind of a normal size butternut. And here's another one, which is kind of not a normal size butternut. You can see the difference. It's massive. I think part of the reason for the size is because the plants are so healthy. They're really thriving, and this is the soil this year is better than it's ever been, and I think the soil is so nutrient rich. These plants have just done so well. Even with the summer squash, the zucchini, we had boring worms in the zucchini. And even though we had boring worms in the trunks of the zucchini are eaten up, almost destroyed, the zucchini just keeps growing. It thrives. It's able to sustain that pest. Now, if you notice when I'm clipping these, here's a spaghetti squash. And spaghetti squash will be green like this. And if you leave them on the vine, they will turn yellow. A lot of them we have are yellow. Again, I like to leave them on longer. But you know when spaghetti squash is ripe, ready to harvest, is when you press on it with your thumbnail and it doesn't dent. It's a hard shell. So that's when your spaghetti squash is ready to harvest. Over here, here's another massive butternut. Now this is a different variety. This variety starts out green and ends up sort of this orange color. This thing is huge. You know, when you look at this, you've got your seeds down here. All of this whole neck area is just pure meat. And that's a lot of squash right there. It's pretty exciting. As I'm clipping these, whoop, that one broke off. You notice that as I'm clipping them with leaving a little bit on the end. And that's so that you don't break them off, break the stem off right at the vegetable, at the fruit there, because then it'll have a tendency to go bad quicker. And if they have blemishes on, now these are blemishes, now that's going to start to rot soon. So you want to eat that first. Winter squashes, the stems get really hard. And if you just go to break them off, then many times what happens is those stems, they just break off right there at the squash. So they're not terribly hard to cut. They are hard, but you get a little bit and then they break off where you want them to break. So summer squash are called summer squash because you eat them in the summer. Winter squash are called winter squash because they will winter over. If you store them correctly, you can keep winter squash all winter long. We usually have them until well into the springtime. And we've set up a place in the basement where I have it sort of a small room, like a root cellar type thing. And it's climate controlled. It doesn't have to be refrigerated. It doesn't have to be that cold, but you want it to be cool and dry. And they will last you for a good long while. We found that the butternut squash actually lasts longer than the spaghetti squash, which is nice because I like butternut squash more than spaghetti squash. And you can see these are growing up the trellis, and we have the tower trellises inside the garden, and they did quite well growing up there. It's a great use of space. Actually, you get them off the ground and the critters couldn't get at them that way, which is nice. You know, the soil here has done, the plants have done so well here this year. And originally in the film, Paul made the statement that it gets better every year. and it really does get better every year. That's what we found here. We've been here now 10 years, 11 years, and this has been unquestionably the best year of growth that we've had yet. And the soil is so nutrient rich. We had it sent into Penn State, and on an earlier video you could see that the calcium was just off the charts. It was so good. And a lot of people say that it's too acidic, that the wood chips are too acidic for the soil, and that's not the case. The acid level was 6.8, which is really perfect. And the most interesting thing is that the organic matter was 38.8%. And again, I just really wondered why it was so low, and then come to find out that wasn't low at all. That many seasoned organic gardeners never get above 15%, and this is 38.8%. So there is a lot of organic matter that for the plants to be able to use, and as the plants use that, you know, you are what you eat. So as the plants use that organic matter and that nutrient-rich soil, and you eat the plants, you're getting nutrient-rich food. In the wintertime, we'll eat butternut squash up to 3 times a week. Whether that be make a big pot of soup, or roast them, or cut them up. It's a good addition to any meal. So we'll get a lot of them out of here. We'll harvest a bunch of them and have a lot in the basement. So if you ever come to our house for dinner, you might get served butternut squash. So here I am with a spaghetti squash vine, and it has actually been eaten off, and many of the leaves have been eaten by the woodchucks around here. They got in under the fence, and I've taken care of that. But this vine ends here, but it's been eaten off. Now I follow that vine back, and it goes through here, through here, through here, and through here, and it stops here. I measured that off. That's 45 feet. That's a 45-foot vine. And these things, when you plant them in the garden, you want to make room for 12-foot vines, not 45-foot vines. They grew like crazy. You think the soil's good? I think the soil's great. All right, thanks for watching. So this is the harvest. We got most of them out. We didn't take them all. We'll get these put away. That's a lot of squash.